Hey everybody, it's UnsungNPC here with more guide videos, this time for Pillars of Eternity. I've had people ask about it in the comments, I've mentioned it a couple times, but we're finally doing it. I'll be doing guide videos for Pillars 1 and Pillars 2, and for both of them I'll be doing just basic rules and mechanics video, and then guides on the different classes and the different abilities they have, and then maybe a video on talents and spells and things like that, just kind of getting into it in a more in-depth. So without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so first we have to deal with the different races. Now each race gets stat increases. They'll either get 2 points into stats, or they'll get 3 points and then 1 point taken away from stats, depending on the race. Okay, so for humans, they get might and resolve, and we're gonna go over what these stats do in a sec, but just know they get might and resolve. Amauans get 2 might. Dwarves get 2 might, 1 con, and -1 dexterity. Elves get dexterity and perception. Orlins get resolve, perception twice, and might -1. And godlikes get dexterity and intellect. Now, if you haven't played this game before, but have played other RPGs, you're probably sitting here thinking, what the heck are Amauans, Orlins, and godlike? They are races created for this game, for this world. That's one of the things I love about this game, is like the world building, the races, how the races and nations interact, the gods, everything is so well done, so well explained, well written. It's a beautiful world, which is why I'm excited for Avowed to come out, because it takes place in the same world, just, you know, a different section of history or a different part of it or whatever, but really cool. So let's get into the racial powers. Each race has a power. Okay, for the humans, your sub-races are meadow folk, ocean folk, and savannah folk. All this does is change kind of like your ethnicity within the game. There might be some dialogue dependent upon these specific sub-races, more likely in 2 than in Pillars 1, but the ability that you get is virtually the same. And by that I mean it's exactly the same. It's Fighting Spirit. Once per encounter, 5 seconds after being reduced below 50% endurance, folk temporarily gain bonuses to accuracy and damage. There's a lot of words in there that we're going to go over, so don't worry about it. But yeah, that's what the folk get. Amauans. You have Coastal Amauans, Towering Physique. They gain bonuses to defend against prone and stun effects. Pretty good for any type of frontliner. And then Island Amauans get an additional weapon set. Everyone starts with 2. Island Amauans start with 3. Why you need additional weapon sets, I don't know. I don't use them. I use 1 weapon set per character, because why do I need multiple weapons? The Dwarf. Mountain Dwarves get bonus to defend against poison and disease attacks, which is pretty cool. And then Boreal Dwarves gain 15 accuracy against any creature of the Wilder or Primordial types. Primordial is what it is in D&D, it's just the otherworldly beings, right? Wilders are kind of like tribal lizard people, tribal wolf people, anything that's like in a tribe or a barbarian that's not human is a Wilder. Elves. What elves get distant advantage against any enemy that is more than 4 meters away. What elves gain bonuses to accuracy, deflection, and reflex. So they gain defenses and offenses against targets that are further away. Pale elves get elemental endurance, which is increased burn and freeze damage reductions, which is really nice. Especially since, like, in the DLC there's a lot of fire and ice damage, and then there's just a lot of fire damage in the base game already, so that's really neat. I like that. Orlins. Minor threat for the Hearth Orlins. When attacking any target that is also being targeted by a teammate, Hearth Orlands convert some of their hits into crits. Basically, really, really great rogues or any secondary damage dealer that's not the one who's like the frontline person. Wild Orlands, Defiant Resolve. After being subjected to a will attack, Wild Orlands temporarily gain a bonus to all defenses. So if you try to hit them with anything that affects their will defense, their mind, then they will gain bonuses to all of their defenses, which is actually a pretty powerful ability. And then Godlikes. Now there's different Godlikes. What Godlikes are like people born with innate blessings, or how some people see them, curses, from different gods. So the god of death, the god of fire and war, the god of the moon and ocean. No, just the moon. Who's the moon god like from? Not entirely sure. And then the nature from the god of the hunt. There's other godlikes too, but not in this game. So Death Godlike get Death's Usher. When Death Godlike attack an enemy with 25% or less endurance, their damage is increased, so better at finishing them off. Fire Godlikes have Battle Forged. When reduced below 50% endurance, Fire Godlike glow like metal in a forge, gaining damage reduction and doing a small amount of fire damage to any creature who hits them in melee. So also pretty good for a frontliner or a ranged character who's trying to not get hit but is continuously getting hit for some reason. Moon Godlikes, Silvertide. Every encounter when reduced below 75%, 50%, and 25% endurance, Moon Godlikes generate wave of healing moonlight that restore endurance to them and their allies. So that's really cool. So they'll continuously get hit and then waves of healing go. I don't actually think that's a good idea for a traditional healer because you're not going to be in the thick of it most of the time. It's great for like a frontliner, like a two-hander especially, because then you just kind of have like this healing buff that's going on passively. Someone that's going to get below those health thresholds is going to be what you want. Nature Godlike. Wellspring of Life. Grants a bonus to might, constitution, and dexterity when endurance is below 50%. All of these guys work really well for like frontline damage dealers in my opinion. But you can use them for anything really. Like, just like the one ability can also just be used as like a safeguard. So you can be ranged character, and then if you happen to get hit, then at least you have a backup plan for a boost or a bonus or whatever. So we'll go with human for the explanation. Now the classes. I'm gonna get into the classes more when we do the class videos, but I'm just gonna kind of briefly go over what the different classes are. So each class will have a starting ability. You'll have starting stats. It'll tell you how good it is compared to the rest of the game. So your endurance, health, accuracy, and deflection. And then each one will get points into certain skills. Okay? So there's Barbarian, Chanter, Cipher, Druid, Fighter, Monk, Paladin, Priest, Ranger, Rogue, Wizard. So Priest is basically like a cleric in any D&D Pathfinder game. A Chanter is almost like a bard, really. They use the power of song, ancient song, to do magic. So, and then Ciphers are kind of like a psychic type of class. They do like psychic things. And then all the rest are pretty self-explanatory. So we'll just put one on for now. We're not going to get into it. So you'll have like different abilities to pick from, and you'll pick one to start with, unless you're doing spells or powers, in which case you'll have like 2 or 3 to start with, depending. And then stats. Okay, so here's what the different stats do. So might is your damage. Okay, the damage you deal, no matter what class you are. The damage you deal, the healing you do, and your fortitude. So damage and healing. So if you're a healing class or a damage dealing class, might is important. And then fortitude as well. So fortitude is your resists attacks on the internal physical systems of the characters. So poison, disease, things like that. Right? Constitution contributes to endurance and health and fortitude as well. So endurance and health. How do I explain this? Endurance is your short-term health, basically. Like, if you don't get your endurance down enough to where you start taking health damage, then your endurance will just come back up, essentially. But your endurance is kind of like your temporary short-term type of health. Your health is your long-term injury resistance. So like that's how much you can. It's kind of like being fatigued almost. Just like if you keep battling and battling and battling, eventually your health will wear down instead of your endurance, and then your endurance will be capped lower and lower and lower as your health gets lower and lower and lower. So your endurance is your first line of defense, then your health is kind of in the second, but you can lose health without losing all of your endurance first. It's possible. Dexterity is action speed and reflex. So action speed is kind of like initiative, basically. If you play Pillars 2 and do turn-based, they call it initiative instead of action speed, but in all the others, it's action speed. It'll be how fast you can get your abilities out and whatnot. And real time with pause, that means that you can act like multiple times before an opponent even gets to act once, basically. And then reflex is out of the way from harmful AoEs like explosions, bolts of lightning, and things like that. But yeah, your action speed is very important. I like to build characters that are high perception, high dex instead of high might, because instead of worrying about dealing damage, I prefer to hit a lot and hit accurately, because I think that'll make up for the lack of might in my characters. Next is perception. Perception gets you interrupt, accuracy, and reflex. We already talked about reflex. Accuracy is what it is. It's accuracy. How often can you get hits? How likely are you to hit a person? Accuracy. Interruption is how likely a damaging attack is to delay their opponent's current or next action. So if your interrupt is high from either perception or different abilities you have, then you're going to be able to interrupt people while they're trying to do actions. It's a very powerful ability. So I like having frontline people have high interruption abilities. Just so they can just swing and then they keep getting interrupted. Or your archer having good interrupt is really nice too. Intellect increases how big your AoE is for AoE spells. That's something that's really interesting, because in D&D Pathfinder you have abilities and things that make AoEs bigger, but in this one it's just the smarter you are, the higher area you can cover with your spells. The duration of your spells and your will defense, which is mental attacks. So mentally paralyzing, brainwashing, charming, whatever. But yeah, your AoE and your duration. So if you're any type of caster at all, whether it be a chanter, a wizard, maybe even a cipher, intellect is very, very important for that. Resolve. Resolve kind of is like, how do I just, so they have might, which is like strength, constitution, dexterity, intellect, which is like intelligence. Perception kind of takes the place of wisdom almost, and resolve is kind of like wisdom as well, but also charisma. It's very confusing to put it into like D&D terms. It's kind of its own thing. So resolve gives you concentration, which is important. It's how to resist interruption. It gives you deflection, which is your defense against direct, melee, and ranged attacks. So when you put on armor, deflection is like the main defense that it can give you against those physical attacks. And then also will, gives you will as well. So those are the stats. So we're just gonna kind of put stats in and whatever, we don't care. Okay, next you get to pick your culture, which is where you're from, and each one gives you a different stat increase. So Adair gives you resolve, Deadfire Archipelago gives you dexterity, Ixamadal Plains gives you resolve, Old Valia gives you intellect, Rawatai constitution, the Living Lands gives you might, and the White That Wends gives you perception. Now, you get certain dialogue sometimes or reactions from certain characters based on your culture or where you're from, but you also get a lot more of that in Pillars 2. In Pillars 2, they really give you dialogue and reactions for everything. Classes, races, culture, your skills, like your dispositions, which we'll get into, like everything. In the first one, there's not as much dialogue like that, but there is still some, which is really, really cool. So Adair is kind of like the Elven Empire, and there's also some humans that live there. Deadfire Archipelago is kind of like the pirate haven of islands. Ixamadal Plains is large expanse of fertile savannas. Okay, so savannas. Mostly farmed by humans and Orlands. Old Valia is crown jewel of the southern seas. It's the crumbled remnants of an empire of warring merchant nations. Humans and dwarves pretty much live there. It's cool. Rawatai is where a lot of the Amawans are from. Most of them Amawan, Orlan, or Dwarven. They're relatively young, some of the most advanced colonial settlements in the east. Rawatai is really big into technology. The Living Lands is kind of like just a wild, diverse ecosystem, just like wild land. So there are some colonies there. And then the White That Wends is like polar ice, like expanse. So yeah, you can kind of pick where you want to be from. And then each one gives you different background choices. And all the backgrounds do is they do sometimes offer up additional dialogue as well, which is really cool. And then they give you skills depending on the background. So Adair, you've got aristocrat, dissident, hunter, mercenary, clergyman, colonist, drifter, laborer, merchant, slave. Deadfire Archipelago, some of the same, but you also have explorer and raider and hunter. Ixamadal Plains, you add philosopher and scholar in there. Old Valia, you've got artist, colonist, merchant. Rawatai, just some different combinations of the same ones we've been over. The Living Lands, okay, adds scientist. This is the only one where you can be a scientist, which is cool. And then the White That Wends gives you mystic, which is its own special thing as well. The mystics. So yeah, you can kind of pick what you want to do there. All right. And then you get to customize. There's not a ton of customization options. Even in 2, there's not like a lot, but there's enough, I feel like. And then there's portraits. And if you have the portrait pack, the total portraits will be like 99 portraits. There's definitely a lot of human portraits and not a lot of other races, unfortunately. But you can import portraits. There'll be a different art style, obviously, but you can't import them, not through the game. You have to go into the file, the folder, and do all of that yourself, but it's still pretty cool. So yeah, you got male and females in here. So you can even just pick like generic whatever, right? And you get to pick a voice. They have a lot of voices.
Mm-hmm.
Now I am the leader of the group.
Quietly now.
Yeah. Follow me.
Let's go!
Nothing will slip past me. I'm here.
I shall lead us.
I'll teach you a lesson.
Steady does it.
I'm here.
Now I am leader of the group.
Let's go!
Quick and quiet.
I shall lead us.
Easy now.
You do none.
Watch and learn.
So, pretty cool. And you pick your name and then you'll hop in the game. So yeah, we went over the stats, we went over the different things here, kind of what they do. We got the different classes. We will do class videos for those. Very excited. We kind of went over the races. I don't want to get too much into the lore of it all because I really want you guys to experience that yourselves, because I think it's interesting. So totally experience that on your own. Dive into the lore. If you get this game, there's like a certain edition on Steam. I don't know if it's the only one that's available or if there's multiple, but the one I have gives you like a guidebook, an almanac, a bunch of different wallpapers, like a bunch of books that you can just read all about this game, which is really cool. So yeah, this is we went over the cultures, the backgrounds. You got different skills. We are gonna go into the skills. It's just hard to do it from this menu because you can't really get a good view of all of them. So I'm gonna be doing a video where I go over skills, talents, spells, things like that. It's gonna be awesome. So keep an eye out for that one. But yeah, this is Pillars of Eternity. It's a really cool game. It has like an older style to it. This was like Obsidian's more traditional style. I really like it. It's charming. So yeah, this is basic rules and mechanics for Pillars 1. And I'm UnsungNPC. I hope you guys check out this game if you haven't already. If you have, let me know how that's gone for you, what you liked, what you didn't like. Let me know what kind of characters you have. I think that'd be really cool. If you guys are interested in a Pillars Let's Play, you could also let me know if that seems cool. We can do that. I'm happy just doing the guided videos though, if that's more our speed. But yeah, I'm UnsungNPC, and I will catch you guys in the next one.